Hidden safely behind barbed wire and under the watchful eyes of guards and gun towers are men living lives completely separated from society. We are here to remember these forgotten lives. We are here to give a voice to the silenced. We are here to meet Native American inmates, some who are behind bars for life. Men who have been unjustly incarcerated, along with men who have committed brutal and inhuman acts. Yet men who also have vibrant and important stories to tell. Stories filled with personal pain and tragic social histories. Stories filled with spirit, wisdom, and hard lessons learned. Men who fought in the late 1970s and 1980s for the rights of American Indians in prison to have access to their own cultural and sacred ways. Men who gather in spiritual circles, who participate in their traditional sweat lodge ceremony and drum the heartbeat of the Earth Mother into their lives as they send prayers to the Great Spirit, asking for blessings and forgiveness for the wrongs they've committed against society, their families, and themselves.
I did the wrong things. I didn't do the right things. And you know what is ironic about all this is that I had a lot of people willing to help me. But I didn't see them. My heart wasn't open. I've been in the system now for 18 and a half years. And it's been a long, hard road. And there were years where I did not have the opportunity to participate in the ceremony. I did not have access to a drum. I was just cast adrift. I did what I had to do to survive. But in the struggle, I learned a lot of things the hard way. This is not the better side of humanity, those of us that are incarcerated.
Usually people that are incarcerated have come to us, especially in the maximum security environment where people have enacted dangerous, deadly acts. They're oftentimes under the influence of narcotic or seeking narcotics.
My name is Chief Orville Looking Horse, Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, Sioux Nation, on the Cheyenne River Reservation. And I've been the keeper of the sacred pipe since I was 12 years old. At the time of the passing of my grandmother into spirit world, she talked about alcoholism, but she instructed about the disease of the mind, and the disease of the alcohol was so powerful that individuals would fight themselves every day.
I had a problem with opening up to people, so I didn't know who to talk to and things like this. Along with being loaded on drugs and alcohol all the time, I didn't know how to cope with it. And it was just a downfall when this individual I didn't know, he came in and he took something out of the house that I had acquired for purposes of starting over again. And I was raised to the point where nobody took anything from me, and I lost it. You know, I lost it, and I did something that I'll regret for the rest of my life, and I pray to Grandfather all the time for forgiveness.
They have long histories of drug use, oftentimes going back to childhood, early adolescence, and even before then. There's problems in the early home usually.
When I was 17 months old, I was taken out of the back seat of my parents' car and made a ward of the state of Oregon. And from that time on, I grew up in orphanages and institutions and foster homes, actually in McLaren when I was 12 years old. McLaren School for Boys in Oregon was the reformatory, and they had people there from 12 to 18. It was the end of the road for when you're a juvenile. And I remember laying there and there were floodlights shining through the windows. When I was laying there looking at the lights, I remember thinking as a young 12-year-old kid, you know, where do I go from here? I spent most of my youth in McLaren. It's where all my friends were, you know. It was the family that I knew.
I remember enjoying being in prison. And I remember all the friends and the people after a while. The longer you're in there, the more that you get to associate with different ones, you know, and become friends with them, you know. And that's sad because I know some brothers that are still in there, and I have been out over 30 years, 35 years, to be exact.
Where does it all begin? Too many American Indian youth suffer from neglect by parents who have no time for them. They are left to take care of themselves, and more often than not, they end up on the streets, lonely, desperate, and willing to do anything to survive.
I had a lot of respect for my mom. I had a lot of respect for my stepdad. My real dad wasn't there. But basically at the age of 11, 12, I pretty much took care of myself. I did a lot of things that I'm not proud of to survive. Without having no father figure, without having a strict mother.
For some inmates who were separated from their parents at an early age by social agencies and placed in foster care and other institutional situations, their lives were definitely improved, and in some cases given a strong opportunity for future success. But for too many young Indians, forced separation from family and community proved to have disastrous effects on their lives. For them, life became a repetitive cycle of crime on the streets, incarceration, parole, continued criminal activity, and once again, prison.
We were a very negative influence on our community, actually, and ourselves, and really didn't care. That's kind of the sad part. It was at one time in Tacoma that we was drinking at an Indian bar, and we had actually beat somebody up pretty bad a couple weeks before that. And somebody said that they was looking for us with a gun. So we left that bar to go to another bar. This wino bumped into my brother, and my brother pushed him back and took his wallet. Some undercover cop had noticed what was going on, you know. And so he came running down the street, jumped on my brother, actually. The guy had a gun, so I took out my knife. I stabbed the man. So we took off running. The next thing I know, I was being shot at. I didn't know I was being shot at because I was pretty intoxicated. But I was shot. I was shot, actually, I can laugh at it now, but I never did tell anybody this at the time because you never want to say you were shot in your ass. I remember cops riding with me in the ambulance, really talking bad about me. I mean, you know, talking about what scum I was, you know, I mean, really bad stuff. I mean, they were saying, this is the kind of piece of shit that will get out again. And they kept saying, die. Die, you motherfucker, die, you know, like that. And I was sent to the Washington State Penitentiary.
Prison life is harsh. Inmates who are consistently violent and considered an ongoing risk to the safety of staff and other inmates are placed in secure housing units known as SHUs. They are allowed outside only for medical attention and a brief exercise period in a carefully monitored and highly secured area. The men who walk the yard in prison blues project a grim, don't mess with me attitude. The atmosphere is heavy with a sense of controlled violence. Everywhere you look is another reminder of the harsh realities some people have either brought upon themselves or have been subjected to by an oppressive and all too often unjust social and economic environment. Stark utilitarian architecture, straight demarcation lines, armed correctional officers, gun towers, and endless coils of barbed wire. So how do Native American inmates maintain self-respect and a sense of their own humanity in an environment which does very little to encourage that? Where do they go for a moment's peace to experience, at least for a while, a measure of inner freedom? How do they sustain their spirits? How do they work at real change within their own beings so that life behind bars can have a purpose beyond simply doing time?
I remember even back then, we didn't have anything going at all. Once in a while, we'd run against another, our brother on the yard, and we'd ask him where he was from. And then we'd talk about another brother in another ward where he was from. Then we'd get together once in a while, you know. But as far as associations and gatherings and things that the prison system put on for us as Indian men in there was none.
In the last few decades, Native American leaders and their supporters have organized numerous public events to take a stand against the harsh treatment of Indians on and off the reservation, and to fight for their religious and political rights as sovereign nations. In November of 1969, Native Americans and their supporters in California, led by Richard Oakes, descended upon Alcatraz Island, situated in the San Francisco Bay. Oakes and his supporters proclaimed the retaking of Alcatraz in the name of all American Indians. News of the occupation of Alcatraz spread like a wildfire across the nation and became a rallying cry for all American Indians to join forces, to make their presence felt, to have their concerns heard, and to pressure the United States government into responding. Law enforcement officers around the country made a concerted effort to round up and jail as many Native American leaders as they could. In prison, they were able to witness firsthand what life was like inside for their brothers and sisters. During the 1970s in California, American Indians began to organize themselves, both inside the prison system and outside. They drafted letters, sought legal support, and forced the Department of Corrections to address the need for Native American cultural and spiritual programs.
In 1970, or actually, I really don't know the exact year that the Joint Principal Treaty was drafted up in San Quentin, but the brothers in there, along with Archie Fire, drew up a draft that stated the importance of having a spiritual leader come in, the importance of having a sweat lodge, the importance of having elders come in, powwows.
We started recognizing that they were a group and an identity unto themselves. And so we started saying, okay, what are your needs? And they didn't need a chapel, they didn't need a building, they needed some sacred grounds where they could perform their sacred ceremony.
After the passage of the American Indian Freedom of Religions Act in 1978, correctional facilities could no longer refuse Native Americans access to their cultural traditions and sacred ways. But to convince the Department of Corrections was no easy task.
It was a long struggle, you know, but I mean a good struggle. And I was going into San Quentin 20 years. I used to go up on death row. And then their excuse was because I belonged to the American Indian movement and that I had a record, that I could no longer go in there no more, you know. So they tried to stop me. You know, in fact, one time, one of the guards up there just took me by the shoulder and escorted me off the grounds, you know, told me not to come back. Friends like Jay Peterson, the Californian, they had my record expunged. And then finally they sent me a letter, you know, asking me to come back.
It continues to be necessary, even today, to educate, inform, and sensitize wardens, prison program coordinators, and guards to Native American inmate rights and religious freedoms.
You know, there's times when I can make out a memo that we're going to do a purification lodge on such a day at such a time, and sometimes it takes 4 hours just to get the inmates out to go to the ceremonial grounds because of administration, the officers that work there, they're just, a lot of times they just do that on purpose.
However, the benefits of Native American programs in prison is clear to all. In many correctional facilities today, the religious and cultural needs of Native American inmates are respected.
At Solano, we've been here about 15 years, and it's only been in the last few years that we've had a sweat lodge and a sacred grounds on each one of our 4 yards.
Unlike ceremonial ground in the free world, where the beauty and sounds of the natural environment surround you, where prayers and sacred rituals can be performed privately in peace and tranquility, in the world of inmate corrections, the spiritual grounds are placed squarely in the prison yard, in full view of gun towers and the inmate population.
As a Native American chaplain working in prison, to have a fire inside is a privilege. It's an honor. It's a way that the inmates, the Native American inmates, can purify their mind, body, and spirit through the Purification Lodge. We're inside a fence. It's like about 12 by 12 fence, square fence, barbed wire all the way around. And you feel like you're in a cage. Here it's not. Here it's free. You follow your heart here. Over there you do too when you in ceremony, but you have to be back at a certain time, and you have to respect the rules and regulations of the prison.
Each prison will make its own determination where they're going to put their sacred grounds. If you're, for example, in a level 4 institution where you have to have gun coverage of your yards, your sacred grounds could not be somewhere where the inmates would be unsafe. And our concern is when they're walking across the yard to get to that area, if they were go through a place where they could not be seen, then there's an opportunity for violence to occur, and we wouldn't be able to stop it, we wouldn't be able to see it.
The presence of American Indian ceremonial grounds in the prison yards and the sound of the drum, with songs of great heart being heard across the facility, have had a very real and positive effect on the other inmate populations and the prison environment as a whole.
I can't think in my history of when a drumming was going on that we had an incident go down. And not to say that it hasn't happened, but I'm just not aware of when that activity was going on that a riot or something kicked off. So I see the very positive sides of having the sacred grounds not only visible, but audio where people can hear and see what's going on. As you walk the grounds, you'll see that they're well taken care of. The earth is well taken care of, it's respected, and that sets a tone for the other inmates. And when they're drumming and you walk across, it just has a calming effect. And it would be sad to put that off where the other rest of the population, we may only have 80 American Indians participating, but there might be 1,500 listening.
And this is an important perspective to keep in mind, since the prison environment is certainly not organized according to the normal principles of community life as we know it outside the prison walls. The maintenance of order between the races and the control of violence is critical in the world of corrections.
I've been involved in prison for the last 6 years. And the climate in prison is one that is so different than any of us would expect on the outside. In prison, every single person is just a race. There's no individuality at all. There's either white, black, others, or Mexican.
One of the unexpected benefits of the presence of the Native American circles and their ceremonial grounds in the prison yard is the reduction of racial tension and violence.
Oftentimes, if you're a Northern Hispanic or a Southern Hispanic, you can't get along. But when you go into the sacred grounds, it makes no difference. You're American Indian. It doesn't matter if you're Cherokee or Sioux or Apache or Navajo. It doesn't matter. They all participate in there as a community. And I like to see that. And if you're going to break down these false barriers about discrimination, and this is one great way to see it visible right there.
It's not simple being on the prison yards and going to ceremonies and going out and dealing with populations aside from Native American Indians.
Well, the other races in the institution, I think that they have a lot of respect for the Native Americans. Of course, they've seen a lot of things on TV. A lot of times, half the stuff that they know is not true. So they're always curious. They see us when we have ceremony. They see us when we're drumming. They see us the way we talk, the differences. And out of that curiosity, they approach us sometimes. And in the best way we can, we explain them things that they're curious about.
The American Indian spiritual circles in the prisons offer inmates the opportunity to join a close community of brothers who support and protect each other. To join the spiritual circle is an important first step for a new inmate that marks a beginning and a signal of hope for the future.
We're able to practice our traditional ways, come together as a group and share things in a good way, much as people would come to a church and pray and gather and have a good time together.
Occasionally, some prison facilities will permit visitors to bring a traditional drum to share songs, stories, and messages from the outside to the Native American spiritual circles inside. The message of friendship and community built around the drum is strong and sincere.
I do know a woman's honoring song also. That's the Chumash woman's honoring song that I learned from my brother not too long ago. I'd like to share it with you.
Over, we're going to get a sit together around the drum and kick up some songs that we can't kick up on the film. Out of respect for the ceremonies. Myself, I love the ceremony songs. When we're doing ceremony, it's real powerful. The drum's real powerful to me. Thank you, Matakuyase.
The power of the drum and the songs, the dancing in the prison chapel, the community feeling that is expressed when visitors come and celebrate a powwow with the Native American Circle. All this reminds the brothers inside of the days when they were free. Free to enjoy the beauty of the natural environment. Free to participate in the drumming and dancing. during a traditional powwow, surrounded by family and friends. Sometimes, it can even be said that the songs being sung around the drum inside the prison walls can transport these brothers back to those days of freedom.
The older guys would, teach you how to dance Indian, And this is something I had never done before. It's funny how taken away from your culture you can actually be to a point to where you're embarrassed to express your cultural identity.
Some inmates begin to learn of their culture and to gain pride in who they are only after release. And, if they were lucky, they found themselves in a supportive environment with people willing to commit themselves to their recovery and rehabilitation. There are times, though, when even that is not enough.
I was blessed to find Three Rivers Lodge in Manteca. The program was 90 days, and I ended up staying around Three Rivers and the ceremonies for 5 years. And during them 5 years, I've got to see many things. The ceremonies, they took me all over the country. I was fortunate enough to meet a lot of people, being on committees, powwows, and security, and different things for AIM and Dennis Banks. All in the San Francisco Bay Area. Through that, too, I was adopted by a Blackfoot lady named Marilyn St. Germain, and she worked for the Oakland Child Resource Center. I was like riding on the wave, and I was being groomed, by certain people in the ways. I was blessed in that fact. And I spread myself too thin, always on the road doing things, and I fell. I started using and abusing substances and drinking, and I lost everything. My freedom, my family. It was hard, real hard, losing all those things I had out there and hurting the Indian community, and most of all hurting my family, not being a good father and a husband, and using drugs and alcohol during ceremonies, and it cost me a lot,
If there's any hope at all, it's going to come from our heritage and what we believe and what we have been taught. If you believe that you're going to ride with the Great Spirit, no matter what happens here, that there's that great hope that if I do well, I do those things that I'm asked to do, that in the next life, the next experience, it will be better. And people make mistakes all throughout their lives, but life is not a mistake. You may make mistakes, but you need to cherish the day.
Buffalo honoring song. Learned it from a Loney brother. It's a good song.
And for the Native American brothers inside the prison walls, sitting around the drum together and sharing songs and stories with each other is one of their ways of cherishing the day.
Sometimes we feel like we have no voice. A lot of brothers on this yard, we always share in laughter and have a good time when we get on this drum. Sometimes, some places, we're not allowed to have a drum. But with this drum here, it brings us all together, it gives us pride.
It is not always that way for many Native American inmates. It may take years of going in and out of prisons, of having to deal with their own anger and self-hatred, and of having to finally recover from their own self-abusive habits.
What we had to do was go through the other society, and sometimes it's overwhelming, and some handle it different than the others. Growing up, you have all your ceremonies intact, and then come time you have to go to school and you have to go work, you know, so you try to understand the two worlds. Some of us don't like leaving our world for the other world.
First of all, when people are first come to the prison system, they're pointing fingers. The common attitude is that other people have put them there, that they're not really responsible for their actions. It takes a while for them to realize that the choices that they've made have put them there. And that can take a matter of 6 months to 6 years for that to happen. At that point, then the person becomes available.
When I was young and inexperienced before coming to prison, I didn't take into consideration the consequences of my actions. I understood the severity, but I didn't care. You just don't care, you know? And it's that you don't care enough for yourself. You lose your dignity, your self-respect, and that's what happens.
And what we try to do is to bring the humanness back into each and every man. Because when you are in prison, you kind of lose that. You lose your, you lose what you remembered from the outside. You lose how you treated one another. You lose your sense of community. You lose almost every aspect of who you were. And sometimes in the beginning, and it might take years for these men to gain that back and to really come to a point where they want to change their belief systems and change their behavior and look at things that they did and take responsibility for them.
I still haven't forgiven myself, and I'm going through a healing process right now. It's taking time, you know, but with everything in here and the circle we have and all the ceremonies we have, it's slowly happening, you know. I could get up and dance and sing, and my mind is clear right now, you know. My heart's clear, and maybe this is what it took for me to embrace Grandfather and his gifts again.
And every time I'd be knocked off balance, and I'd end up somewhere in the hole, in solitary confinement, you know. Those were the times when I really had to look at myself. I was forced to look at myself. I didn't have a choice. And to reflect upon my actions. And it was slowly and painfully I had to learn what it was to be a man. What it was to be a man and to stand up and to own up to your actions. And then something else happened to me. I found the courage to believe in myself.
Essential to Native American programming are the Native American chaplains, or spiritual advisors. These men and women devote great amounts of time and heartfelt effort to facilitate the needs of the spiritual circles inside the prisons.
Because without me, they cannot have ceremony. So they need some kind of spiritual advisor to be there for them. So I play an important part for them, that they can come to the Purification Lodge, that they can have sage, cedar, tobacco, beads, whatever they need. You know, I do my best to bring it to them for their needs according to CDC.
The work of a Native American chaplain is not easy, and the emotional and psychological toll it takes is sometimes difficult to bear.
It's not easy working with the inmates. It's not easy in my heart and mind, because a lot of times, you know, you bring that stress home with you. You bring the problems home with you. But we do our best to leave it there. And then we can come here and pray this way and be free again. So freedom in the heart and mind is very important. The freedom of the people is very important.
Spiritual programming includes one of the most powerful ceremonies among Native American tribes, the Sweat Lodge. In the prison system, the Sweat Lodge, or Purification Lodge, is where the heart of healing, recovery, rehabilitation, and community building can be found.
Some of us have lost some understanding, you know, and so we try to get that back, you know, to betterment of everybody and everything.
If one person is sick, the whole family is sick. And there's got to be a holistic view or understanding about the sacred circle or sacred life upon Mother Earth.
The Sweat Lodge with the spiritual circle here, what it means to us and what we do in there is a chance to get back to our relations and to learn our Native American ways.
So we have the fire and we have the sacred altar, the essence of life, of the heart. The things that you bring to the ceremony, you put them on the altar. The drums, sage, sacred abalone shells, sacred rattles, tobacco, all the gift offerings that you give away, you put them here on the sacred altar, which is your heart. Then you have the sacred willow people here that you can see. The willow people, because they are people. We ask for them to come here in prayer so we can purify the mind, body, and spirit, and so we can be with them as one, so we can learn to bend as they bend, so they can give us support. It's also the ribs of the people from South, Central to North America. So in all cultures, you know, we use the sacred medicine wheel, which is right here to the east, to the south, to the west, to the north, and to the center, where the Earth Mother lives, where the fire comes in and is put forth to the center with the stone people to give us creation, to give us life, to give us rebirth, regeneration of all things, unknown and known.
For the inmate, walking on the Red Road, the path of Native American spirituality involves personal commitment, a shedding of self-importance, a concern for others, and the acceptance and belief in a higher sacred power. A transformational and illuminating process brought forth through a lifetime of dedication to ceremony can begin right here, behind prison walls.
I believe that the Sacred Sweat Lodge inside maximum security state penitentiary is the key to my release. It gave me the strength to be who I am today, to be able to sit around the drum and sing a song, to be able to dance for all of our people. Those are very important pieces to freedom.
It's all right here. It's right out in our front yard.
and a lot of people are in the cities, and a lot of brothers that are out there messing up. They're away from the lodge. They can't just go to every corner and go to church. They have to go find it. It makes it hard. And in here we get handed this. And for me, I was handed this way of life. You know, I mean, I was born Indian, but I was never handed this way of life as a child. I was in the city. And until I came here, I got handed this. And it means a lot to me.
The California prison system accepts the value of building community relationships. They have facilitated an outside visitors program. Organizations such as Barrios Unidos are now allowed to enter the prisons. They give the prisoners a message of hope that there is a community outside that cares about them.
Barrios Unidos is a nonprofit organization working to reduce violence in our communities. The prison project started under the direction of the executive director of Barrios Unidos, Nani Alejandres. Wanted very much to get involved incarcerated men and women to help our youth understand better the pitfalls of negative activities that they could get involved with. The executive director and myself are brother and sister, and our family has been very much affected by drugs and alcohol. We have 25 relatives that are incarcerated today, and we only have 2 in college. And so we wanted to break the cycles of the drug and alcohol in our family. Through the prison project, I do multiple things. In Solano State Prison, I work mainly with the Native American Committee, doing powwow ceremonies, gatherings with the inmates.
It is not easy to find committed and caring volunteers from the outside to come into prisons on a regular basis to bring friendship and community to the inmates, to drum and sing with them, to pray with them, to laugh, and to cry with them.
For a long time, I was doing the project a lot on my own with maybe 1 or 2 persons helping me out. Sometimes I would have maybe 6 people. About 3 years ago, I was introduced to a man named Larry Hewitt and Gabe Santiago from Salinas, California. When they answered my call and the drum circle from the outside community came in to meet the drum circle inside community as I knew them, it just became one family.
People don't need to come back there and see us. People come back there and see us because they want to come back there. And that means a lot to somebody incarcerated.
Powwows are significant events in the lives of Native Americans. They are a celebration of life, a time for feasting, singing, dancing, and bringing communities together. They provide opportunities to visit old friends, to catch up on gossip, and share information. Children play and learn Indian ways from their elders. For the Native Americans who are locked up for years, for a powwow to be allowed inside prison walls is especially meaningful because it does not happen too often.
The powwows gatherings inside the institution are not the same as we know them out here. They're very restricted. They have to go through lots and lots of memorandums and paperwork, and about 4 or 5 signatures have to go on each memorandum. So it's not like out here we just call somebody and we say, hey, we're putting a powwow on, you know, and get everybody together. It's not like that. And if one signature is missing, they have to start all over again.
The drummers and visitors at the powwow in the prison chapel call on the Creator with a tobacco offering placed on the surface of the drum, which they offer as a prayer for blessings and spiritual guidance. The visiting drummers take a brief opportunity to introduce themselves and to take a moment to express their thoughts and feelings. Everyone is brought together as a community, as a family. When the drum gets rolling and the energy is high, it can become a vehicle from which to spiritually travel to another place.
When I leave here, this place, a little piece of me stays here.
It's hard for me to put in words how I feel. As long as I'm able to sit and pray with them, beat on the drum with them, share with them my song, my voice, I go back out to the world, I feel good.
The mission of the California Department of Corrections is to safely and securely house inmates and to provide meaningful educational and vocational training that prepares them for successful reentry into the community.
There were times in my life when I was so desperate that it didn't matter to me whether I lived or died. And you come to the realization that you have power. We all have a power, the power of choice. To make those choices in our life. And when I realized this, I says, you know what? I am not powerless. I am not helpless. You just have to harness that power.
While in prison, I've been fortunate enough to come in contact with the Inmate Youth Offender Program. I've really applied myself to it, trying to build something for myself. I never thought I would have a degree in anything. Never thought I would ever have my diploma. Coming to prison, I've been able to look at things and slow down and see that there is a future for me.
For other inmates, the decision to turn their lives around once and for all was derived from their spiritual life in prison and also by looking to the outside for support and legal assistance. This is how it was for one man who decided to look forward to a future filled with hope and promise, a future as a free man, free to make choices to live outside, to build a new life, and to provide a safe haven for his family.
I was able to break free from the corrections department when a guard died out in front of the chow hall. He was stabbed by my brother twice, 3 times actually, 2 times in the heart. He died in my arms actually because I was fighting with him and my brother was protecting me. And so we were locked up, put in the intensive security unit and charged with first-degree murder. And so they brought the prosecuting attorney down in front of our cell to read us the special findings that they were going to try to seek the death penalty. I made a decision then that I really needed to get out of there. My whole life flashed before me. They raised me from when I was a little guy through all the institutions. And now they were telling me they wanted to kill me. My brother was found guilty of second-degree murder and given another life sentence. And he hung himself 2 cells away from me in the intensive security unit. I ended up with a real good attorney by the name of Leonard Weinglass. Karen Rudolph, who is now my wife. She was also head of my defense committee while I was on trial. And I remember when I was released, Karen came to pick me up. Before I would just run straight to the bar and go get drunk, but I knew I couldn't do that. I used to always say the formula was gym plus alcohol equals prison. And that's reality. It's reality to this day. If gym plus alcohol equals prison. Because I know if I take that drink, you know, there is no laws. There's no laws when I drink.
Dude, let me tell you, man, it's a rigorous world. It's hard. It's real hard sometimes. You know, you got a lot of guys out there that just want to give up too, and they go right to a bottle. You know, and that bottle isn't a pretty place to be, you know. And I see a lot of strong faces in here. You know, at least here you don't have to get lost in the bottle and that drum talks to you, you know.
Brother right here has a bear song.
Oh, the drum fills my heart with happiness, and it reminds me who I am. It just saddens me that I can't be out in the streets. But maybe someday I'll be home. Teaching me that song, brother, from the heart.
I've been clean and sober now since 1991. And, you know, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. My wife said one time, you know, we'll never have the experience of having kids. And I said, we can be foster parents. We were able to adopt Jay, and we're legal guardians of Arthur. They've changed our whole life.
For some Native American inmates, the future does hold promise. They will carry on the legacy left to them by years of being institutionalized with other inmates who have become family and to whom they now have responsibilities. For at least one young inmate, bonds forged with the brothers in his spiritual circle will be lasting ones.
I see the pain in their eyes, the hurt that they feel. I feel it. It's not a good feeling. I look at that and it makes me want to do better. It makes me want to do things for these brothers, try and help them. Not just in here, but when I leave here. Because for the most part, these brothers are abandoned. Their people are there. But after 20 years, don't they ever think they're going to come home. So it falls on someone. And I want to be that someone for these brothers.
People have a perception that people who spend most of their lives in prison cannot change. Well, I think I'm proof that you can.
People will come to me and say, how can you work with those horrible people? And I'll look at them and I'll say, I'm not working with horrible people. I'm working with men who've made terrible mistakes in their life, but they're as human as you and I. And working there and being with these men on a daily basis has shown me that when you communicate with respect and professional behavior and on a heart level where I don't look into their crime. I see the person that's sitting before me and I see their willingness to change and to grow and to participate. And I try to help guide that and give them tools so they can end up being a better person. So I don't look at what they did, I look at where they're going.
So I sing for all these things, you know, and I sing for each of your family, you know, the best way I can. Thank you, sisters.